She walked into the biker bar with a gun hidden behind her back. The music stopped as she crossed the threshold, dozens of eyes tracking her every move. They laughed, these men of leather and chrome, at the sight of a young woman alone in their world. When she pulled the weapon, chaos erupted. "Put it down, sweetheart," one sneered. "You're in the wrong bar." Her aim never wavered as she pointed at the gray-bearded man in the corner. "I'm here for my dad," she said. Their laughter died instantly. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoy stories of hidden truths and unexpected courage, consider subscribing for more. Elijah Thorne parked her weathered Honda across from the Wolf's Head bar, killing the engine but sitting motionless for several long moments. The neon sign flickered erratically, bathing her face in harsh red pulses that matched the pounding of her heart. It was exactly as her mother had described it once, during a rare, feverish confession near the end. A den of chrome and leather where devils make their deals. Her fingers trembled slightly as she checked her appearance in the rearview mirror. Dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. No makeup. Nothing to draw attention except for what couldn't be helped. Eyes too distinctive to disguise. A genetic inheritance she'd spent years resenting. The jacket felt wrong on her shoulders, too new despite her attempts to weather it. She'd bought it at a second-hand store, but even used, it lacked the patina of hard miles and harder years that marked the real ones. An imposter's costume. Like her. She reached for the glove compartment, hesitated, then popped it open. The gun nestled inside was her mother's. AIM 38 Special that Lorelei had kept beneath her pillow for as long as Elijah could remember. Just in case, she'd always said, though in case of what, she'd never specified. Now, Elijah understood. With deliberate movements that betrayed none of her inner turmoil, she tucked the gun into the back of her jeans and pulled the jacket over it. From her wallet, she extracted a weathered photograph, so often handled that its creases had turned white and fragile. Two men in motorcycle cuts standing before bikes gleaming in sunlight, arms slung over each other's shoulders. The one on the right was labeled Knox in faded ink. The other had no name, but she didn't need one. Those were her eyes staring back at her, set in a younger face. The temperature had dropped with the sun, bringing a bite to the early spring air. Elijah crossed the nearly empty lot, gravel crunching beneath her boots as she approached the bar. A cluster of motorcycles stood sentry near the entrance, chrome detailing catching the neon glow. Three men lounged nearby, watching her approach with undisguised interest. Their leather cuts bore the same insignia she recognized from the photograph. A snarling wolf's head with blood-red eyes, the words, "Iron Wolves MC," arched above it. "Evening," one said, straightening from his slouched position against a bike. His eyes tracked her from boots to face, lingering in between. "You look lost." "I'm not," Elijah replied, continuing toward the door. Another chuckled, the sound containing no warmth. "Private establishment, honey. Members and guests only." She didn't break stride. "I'm looking for someone inside." "Aren't we all?" the third said, earning laughter from his companions. The door opened before she reached it, spilling golden light and the thrum of music onto the asphalt. A massive figure filled the doorway, silhouetted against the light. A man in his 60s with a beard like steel wool and forearms corded with muscle and ink. His cut identified him as Huxley, Sergeant at Arms. "Problem here?" he rumbled, gaze settling on Elysia. "Just explaining to the lady that she's at the wrong place," the first biker said. Huxley's eyes narrowed as he studied her. "Who you looking for, girl?" Elysia met his gaze steadily. "I need to speak with someone inside. It's important." "Everyone inside is important," he said, a hint of amusement in his gravelly voice. "That doesn't make this a public house." "Please," she said, the word feeling foreign on her tongue. She hadn't come to beg. 5 minutes. Something in her tone must have registered because Huxley's expression shifted slightly. He stepped aside, holding the door open. 5 minutes. But if anyone asks, you came in on your own. I never saw you. Elysia slipped past him into the bar, her senses immediately assaulted by the competing stimuli. Music pounded from speakers mounted in corners. The sharp tang of whiskey cut through the underlying notes of leather, sweat, and motor oil. Pool cues cracked against balls on 2 tables, while a dartboard on the far wall was surrounded by a small crowd shouting bets. The room was larger than it had appeared from outside, with a long bar running along one wall, booths lining another, and tables scattered throughout the central space. The Iron Wolves insignia dominated the back wall, rendered in gleaming metal that caught the light. Conversations began to falter as patrons noticed her. The music played on, but human voices dwindled, creating pockets of silence that spread like spilled liquid across the floor. By the time Alicia reached the center of the room, even the music seemed to have dropped in volume, though that might have been the blood rushing in her ears. She scanned the faces, looking for the man from the photograph. Most were strangers, their expressions ranging from curiosity to hostility. A few women were scattered among them, looking no more welcoming than their male counterparts. A young man detached himself from a group near the bar and approached her, moving with the cocky assurance of someone with something to prove. He couldn't have been much older than her, with a cut that read "Prospect" instead of a name. "You lost, Princess?" he asked, loud enough for the entire room to hear. "Uber drop you at the wrong address?" Laughter rippled through the crowd, breaking some of the tension. Alicia ignored him, her attention caught by a gray-bearded man sitting at a corner table, deep in conversation with two others. There was something in the set of his shoulders, the angle of his head. She started toward him, but her path was blocked as several men moved to intercept her. Their movements were unhurried but purposeful, cutting off avenues of approach with the casual efficiency of predators herding prey. "That's far enough," one said. "Whatever you're selling, we're not buying." Alicia's hand moved to the small of her back, fingers closing around the grip of the .38. The weight of it was both foreign and familiar. She'd fired it exactly once, when her mother had taken her to a deserted stretch of land outside the city limits on her 16th birthday. "Every woman should know how," Lorelei had said, showing her how to stand, how to sight, how to squeeze rather than pull the trigger. Now, Alicia drew the weapon in one smooth motion, not pointing it at anyone specifically, but holding it where everyone could see. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Chairs scraped back as people rose. Voices shouted warnings and threats. From the corner of her eye, she saw Huxley move toward a spot behind the bar, likely reaching for a weapon of his own. "Easy, easy," a man's voice cut through the chaos. Tall and powerfully built, with the weathered complexion of someone who spent most of his life outdoors, he stepped forward with his hands slightly raised. His cut identified him as Talon Enforcer. "Put it down before you hurt yourself," he said, his tone a blend of condescension and warning. "This isn't your world, sweetheart." Alicia kept her grip steady, focusing past him to the gray-bearded man who had risen from his seat. "Where is he?" she asked, her voice calmer than she felt. The room quieted at her question, curiosity momentarily overriding alarm. The bearded man stepped forward, his companions flanking him protectively. Up close, she could see that his beard was shot through with more gray than the photograph had shown, his face mapped with lines that spoke of hard years in the wind and sun. His cut read, "Knox, Vice President." "Who are you looking for, girl?" he asked, studying her with narrowed eyes. "Wraith," Alicia said, the name feeling strange on her tongue. She'd never spoken it aloud before, had only seen it written on the back of the photograph in her mother's handwriting. "I'm looking for Wraith." The effect was electric. A ripple of tension passed through the room, faces turning toward Knox, whose expression had frozen into unreadability. The silence stretched, broken only by the distant thump of music from speakers that someone had turned down. "Nobody's gone by that name in 15 years, Knox said finally, his voice low and careful. "Who sent you?" Alicia's heart hammered against her ribs, but her hand remained steady. "I sent myself," she replied, then added the words she'd rehearsed for weeks. "I'm his daughter." Knox went very still, recognition flickering in his eyes as the crowd murmured in confusion. He stared at her for a long moment, then made a subtle gesture with his hand. Around the room, the tension eased fractionally as the most aggressive postures relaxed. "Lower the gun," Knox said, not unkindly. "No one's going to hurt you, but this isn't how civilized people have a conversation." "I wasn't sure I'd get a conversation any other way," Alicia replied, but she lowered the weapon slowly, keeping it at her side. Knox nodded to the others. "Give us some space." To Alicia, he said, "Wraith is gone, has been for years." "I tracked him to this chapter," she insisted. "The Iron Wolves, Portland Division." A woman stepped forward from the crowd, mid-30s, with a sharp undercut and arms covered in intricate tattoos. Her cut read, Raven. She studied Elijah with open skepticism. "How'd you know to look here?" she asked. Elijah reached carefully into her pocket with her free hand and extracted the photograph, holding it up for them to see. "My mother kept this hidden. I found it after she died." Knox's expression softened slightly, recognition dawning. "Lorelei, she's gone?" "Last month," Elijah said, a thickness in her throat that hadn't been there moments before. "Cancer." "This is bullshit," Talon interrupted, still tense and ready. "She could be anyone. Cop, rival club, cartel." Knox held up a hand to silence him, eyes never leaving Elijah's face. "If you're who you say you are," he said slowly, "you'd know the name of his bike." It was a test, and Elijah knew it. She also knew the answer, had heard it in her mother's delirious ramblings near the end, when the boundaries between past and present had blurred. "Phantom," she said without hesitation. "Black Harley Softail, 89, with silver flame detailing and a modified exhaust." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Knox's face paled slightly. "When did he leave?" Knox asked quietly. "I was 8, Elijah said, the words coming automatically, rehearsed in her mind 1,000 times. "Came home from school, and he was just gone. Mom never spoke of him again." Knox exchanged a look with Raven, something unspoken passing between them. He gestured toward a door at the back of the bar. "Let's talk somewhere more private." Elijah hesitated, aware of how vulnerable she would be away from witnesses. "I'll keep this with me," she said, indicating the gun. Knox nodded once. "Suit yourself. Raven, Talon, Cypher, with me. Everyone else, back to your business." The crowd dispersed reluctantly, conversations resuming at a subdued volume. Knox led the way to a door marked Private, with Raven and Talon flanking Elijah and an older man with wire-rimmed glasses falling in behind. His cut identified him as Cypher Intelligence Officer. The room beyond was clearly an office, with a large desk dominating, one end and a conference table at the other. Motorcycle memorabilia lined the walls, vintage advertising signs, framed photographs of club gatherings, trophies from rallies and races. One wall held a chronological display of club photos, each labeled with a year. Elijah noticed a gap in the sequence, a rectangle of fresher paint showing where a frame had once hung. Knox settled behind the desk, gesturing for Elijah to take one of the chairs opposite. Raven and Talon remained standing, positioned near the door, while Cypher moved to a corner cabinet and removed a bottle and glasses. "You said your mother died," Knox began, studying her carefully. "What are you really here for?" The directness of the question caught Elijah off guard, though she'd prepared for it. She set the gun on her lap, a compromise between threatening and surrendering it. "Before she died, she gave me this," she said, extracting a small key from her pocket and placing it on the desk. Its design was unusual, old-fashioned, with an intricate pattern on the bow. Said if anything happened to her, I should find him. Said he'd understand what it meant. Cypher approached, lifting the key with careful fingers and examining it through his glasses. "That's a safe deposit box key," he confirmed. "Old style, not many banks use these anymore." Knox exchanged meaningful glances with his officers. "Convenient timing," Talon said from his position by the door. "Feds have been circling us for months." Knox didn't respond to that directly. Instead, he pulled out a burner phone from his desk drawer and stood. "Excuse me a moment," he said, stepping to the far corner of the room and turning his back as he dialed. While he spoke in tones too low to overhear, Elijah studied the room more carefully. Photos of different club members through the years, patches and insignia displayed like military honors, maps with pins marking territories or chapter locations. Her attention was drawn to a glass case mounted on the wall behind Knox's desk, containing a weathered black leather jacket, an old iron wolf's cut, more vintage than the ones they wore now. Embroidered above the heart in faded silver thread was a single word: Wraith. Knox returned, his expression troubled. He sat heavily in his chair, regarding Elijah with new intensity. "If you're really his daughter, why come armed? Why the theatrics?" "Would you have listened otherwise?" Elijah asked. "Would he have?" Knox studied her face, then nodded to Raven. "Check her for wires." Raven approached, professionally impersonal, as she patted Elijah down. She extracted the contents of Elijah's pockets, placing them on the desk: keys, phone, wallet, and a folded paper that she opened and examined before showing it to Knox. "Hospital bill," Raven reported. "Providence Cancer Center, final balance, $273,842. Knox's eyes flicked from the bill to Elijah. "Is that what this is? You think Wraith has money stashed somewhere?" "I don't care about money," Elijah said, the lie bitter on her tongue. Of course she cared. The debt was crushing, had already forced her to sell her mother's house, move to a studio apartment in a neighborhood where sirens were a nightly lullaby. But that wasn't why she'd come. "I want answers. I want to know why he let Mom die alone." Something like sympathy crossed Knox's weathered face. "Kid, it's complicated." He was interrupted by a commotion outside the office. The door burst open, revealing Huxley, his expression urgent. "Riders approaching," he reported. "Not ours." Knox rose immediately. "How many?" "At least 8, coming in fast from the South Road." Knox turned to Elijah. "Stay here." To the others. "Secure the front. Nobody leaves." The club officers filed out quickly, leaving Elijah alone in the office. As soon as the door closed, she was on her feet, moving to the window that overlooked the rear lot. In the distance, she could see headlights approaching, multiple bikes moving in formation. Her heart raced as she tried to make sense of what was happening. Were these rival gang members? Law enforcement? Was this all connected to her arrival somehow? She turned back to the desk, scanning its surface for anything useful, any clue to her father's whereabouts or identity. The sound of raised voices filtered through from the bar, followed by the scrape of furniture being moved. They were barricading the entrance, preparing for a fight. She needed to get out before whatever was about to happen went down. Elijah retrieved her gun and belongings, then moved to the door, pressing her ear against it. The voices had grown more distant, concentrated at the front of the building. She cracked the door open and peered out. A narrow hallway led past storerooms toward what appeared to be a rear exit, the universal red sign glowing faintly in the dimness. Decision made, she slipped out of the office and moved quickly toward the exit, gun held low but ready. The hall was deserted, everyone apparently having moved to defend the front. The rear door was just ahead, promising escape from whatever confrontation was brewing. A shadow detached itself from a doorway as she passed, a hand closing firmly around her arm. Elijah spun, raising the gun in one fluid motion, finger tensed on the trigger. "The gun won't be necessary, Elijah." The world seemed to stop. Standing before her was a man in his early 50s, his dark hair streaked with gray at the temples. His face was weathered by years and hard living, but the eyes, her eyes, were exactly the same as the ones that had stared back at her from the mirror all her life. He wore no cut, just a plain black leather jacket that had seen better days, but she knew immediately who he was. "You know my name," she said, the words coming out flat, an accusation rather than a question. The ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I've always known your name." Outside, the sound of motorcycle engines grew louder, then cut off abruptly. Voices approached the building from both front and rear. "We need to move," he said urgently. "Now!" Elijah didn't lower the gun. "You left us." Pain flashed across his face, quickly controlled, but undeniably real. "I left to protect you, both of you." "She's gone," Elijah said, her voice breaking despite her determination to remain cold. The man, Wraith, Silas, father, stranger, closed his eyes briefly. "I didn't know she was sick," he said quietly. "If I had—" "You'd have what?" Elijah demanded, anger bubbling up through the shock. "Sent money? Shown up at the funeral?" Pounding erupted at the front door, followed by shouted commands. The club members had taken defensive positions, weapons appearing as if conjured from the air. "I would have come home," he said, taking a step toward her, hands raised in a placating gesture. The front door burst open with a splintering crash. Men in tactical gear poured in, voices shouting over each other. "Federal agents! Everyone on the ground!" In the confusion, her father grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the rear exit. "This way," he said, his grip unyielding as he dragged her along. They had almost reached the door when a figure stepped out to block their path. Knox stood with arms crossed, looking between them with an unreadable expression. "You shouldn't have come back," he said to Silas. "They were waiting for you." Understanding dawned on her father's face. "You called them," he said, not a question but a realization. Knox didn't deny it, his silence confirmation enough. The betrayal hung between the men like a physical presence as the sounds of agents securing the front room grew closer. With deliberate movements, Silas removed his leather jacket, not a club cut, but something more personal, and draped it around Alicia's shoulders. It carried his scent, leather and tobacco, and the ghost of cologne that triggered a childhood memory so distant she thought it imagined. "Your mother knew this day would come," he said quietly. "The key opens more than a box, Alicia. It opens the truth." Federal agents rounded the corner, weapons raised. Silas raised his hands slowly, but his eyes remained locked on Knox. "She's my blood," he said, voice carrying despite its softness. "That means she's protected. By all of you." The club members who had been corralled into the main room looked between Knox and Silas, confusion and dawning recognition on some faces, loyalty visibly shifting in real time. Agents moved between them, separating father from daughter. Handcuffs clicked around Silas's wrists as he was led away, but he called over his shoulder, "The deed to the cabin is in your name. Everything you need is there." Alicia stood frozen, her father's jacket heavy on her shoulders, as he was led out the front door. The weight of the gun in her hand seemed suddenly absurd, and she tucked it into the jacket pocket before any of the agents noticed. A female agent approached her, expression stern but not unkind. "Are you all right, miss? Were you being held here against your will?" Before Alicia could answer, Knox spoke from behind her. "She's with us," he said, his voice carrying authority despite the circumstances. "Club family, just visiting." The agent looked skeptical, but moved on to help process the detained bikers. Most were being flex-cuffed and seated along the wall while agents searched the premises. Alicia turned to Knox, 1,000 questions crowding her mind. "What happens now?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Knox's expression was grim as he watched the agents lead her father to a waiting vehicle outside. "Now," he said, "you find that cabin, and we figure out how to fix what I just broke. Have you ever searched for someone, only to discover that they were searching for you too, all along? If this story resonates with you, consider subscribing for more tales of hidden truths and unexpected connections." Dawn streaked the sky in muted brushstrokes of gray and pink as Alicia stood outside the Wolf's Head bar, her father's leather jacket hanging heavy on her shoulders. Federal agents moved efficiently around her, processing the detained bikers and securing evidence. The Iron Wolves sat along the building's exterior wall, hands flex-cuffed behind their backs, faces impassive. Only Knox watched her openly, his weathered face revealing nothing. An agent approached, clipboard in hand. "Miss Thorne, Special Agent Mercer, FBI, I need to ask you a few questions about your presence here tonight." Alicia nodded, struggling to maintain her composure. The events of the past hour felt surreal, disconnected from the life she'd been living just yesterday. "You were the only civilian present during our operation," Mercer continued. "Can you explain why you were here?" Before she could respond, another agent called Mercer aside. They conferred briefly, glancing occasionally in her direction. When Mercer returned, his demeanor had subtly shifted. "It seems there's been a development," he said, studying her with new interest. "You're free to go for now, but we'll need your contact information. We may have additional questions." Alicia provided her details mechanically, mind racing. Something had changed, but what? Was it simply that they'd confirmed her identity as Silas Thorne's daughter, or was there more? As the agents prepared to transport the detained club members, Knox caught her eye from where he sat against the wall. He gave her a barely perceptible nod, then flicked his gaze meaningfully toward the parking lot, where a lone figure stood by her Honda. Raven leaned against the car's hood, somehow having evaded the federal dragnet. She straightened as Alicia approached, her expression guarded but not hostile. "They're taking them to the federal building downtown," Raven said without preamble. "Processing will take hours. Some will be released by noon. Not Wraith, though. Not Knox." "Why are you telling me this?" Alicia asked. "Because you're wearing that jacket," Raven replied simply, nodding at the leather on Alicia's shoulders. "And because Knox gave me a sign to help you. That means something." "I don't understand any of this," Alicia admitted. "Get in your car," Raven instructed. "Follow me. We need to move before they change their minds about letting you go." Alicia hesitated only briefly before sliding into the driver's seat. Through the windshield, she watched Raven mount a sleek black motorcycle and start the engine. The woman looked back once to ensure Elijah was following, then pulled out of the lot. They drove through Portland's awakening streets, the city beginning its daily rhythm as they left the industrial district behind and climbed into the West Hills. Raven led her through winding roads lined with towering Douglas firs, the urban landscape giving way to scattered luxury homes and eventually to more remote properties. After nearly an hour, Raven turned onto a gravel drive that curved between ancient trees. Elijah followed, the Honda suspension protesting the rough terrain. The drive opened into a clearing where a modest cabin stood, its cedar siding weathered to a soft silver gray. A covered porch wrapped around two sides, offering views of the forested valley below and, in the distance, the glittering sprawl of Portland. Raven killed her engine and dismounted. "This is it," she said as Elijah joined her. "Your inheritance, apparently." The cabin looked well-maintained but unlived in, a retreat rather than a home. Wind chimes hung from the porch rafters, singing softly in the morning breeze. "How did you know about this place?" Elijah asked. "I didn't," Raven admitted. "Knox did. He made sure a few of us memorized the location years ago. Said it might be important someday." She produced a small key from her pocket. "This opens the front door, not the same as your deposit box key." Elijah took it, turning it over in her palm. "Why are you helping me?" Raven's expression hardened. "I'm not. I'm following orders. Knox wants you safe until he can sort this mess out." "And my father? Are you helping him too?" "Wraith made his choices a long time ago," Raven said, her tone revealing nothing of her personal feelings. "But the club protects its own. Always has." "I'm not club," Elijah pointed out. Raven's eyes flickered to the jacket Elijah wore. "You're wearing his colors. That means something, whether you understand it or not." She turned back toward her motorcycle. "There's a burner phone inside with my number programmed. Use it if there's trouble. Otherwise, sit tight until you hear from Knox." "Wait," Elijah called as Raven mounted her bike. "The federal agents, they just let me go. Why?" Raven paused, considering her answer. "Your father has many enemies, but he also has friends in unexpected places. Someone pulled strings." She kicked the bike to life. "Search the cabin, find what he left for you, and watch your back." With that cryptic advice, she roared away down the gravel drive, leaving Elijah alone in the clearing, the key clutched in her hand and more questions than answers swirling in her mind. The cabin door opened with a faint creak of hinges that needed oil. Elijah stepped inside, immediately struck by the contradiction of the space. It was simultaneously sparse and deeply personal, like stepping into a museum dedicated to a life she'd never known. The main room was open concept, with a small kitchen area, a living space centered around a stone fireplace, and a dining nook beside windows overlooking the valley. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with volumes on diverse subjects: motorcycle mechanics, wilderness survival, military history, and, unexpectedly, poetry. What caught her attention, however, were the photographs. They covered one entire wall, arranged chronologically, and they were all of her. Elijah as a toddler on a park swing, elementary school class photos, teenage Elijah at track meets, her high school graduation, college orientation, images from every stage of her life, captured from a distance by someone she'd never known was watching. Her knees weakened, and she sank onto a nearby chair, staring at the visual timeline of her existence. He'd been there all along, not present, but watching, documenting the life he'd walked away from. Among the photographs were other items: newspaper clippings of her academic achievements, programs from her school performances, even a copy of her college degree. Near the center of the display hung a framed sketch, her mother's profile, rendered in charcoal with remarkable skill. Lorelei as she had been years ago, young and vibrant, her expression caught in a moment of laughter. The signature in the corner read simply, "St. Silas Thorne, artist, biker, federal fugitive, father." The contradiction of it all made her head spin. A search of the cabin revealed 2 bedrooms. The smaller one appeared unused, with a neatly made bed and empty dresser drawers. The larger contained more evidence of occasional habitation: a few clothes in the closet, toiletries in the adjoining bathroom, a book on the nightstand, with a bookmark placed halfway through. In the nightstand drawer, she found the promised burner phone, and, beneath it, a sealed envelope with her name written in a strong, angular hand. Elijah tore it open with trembling fingers. Elijah, if you're reading this, then you've found me, or I've found you. Either way, the time for separation is over. I can't know what circumstances have brought you to this point, but I suspect they're grim. Your mother would never have told you about me otherwise. This cabin has been your safe house since the day you were born, though you never knew it. The deed is in the floor safe beneath the rug in the living room. The combination is your birthday. I owe you more explanations than this letter can contain, and more apologies than you should ever have to hear. For now, know that leaving you and your mother was the hardest choice I've ever made, and one I've regretted every day since. Trust Knox, trust Raven, trust no one else until I can speak to you. Your father, Silas. Elijah read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and returned to the living room. She pulled back the woven rug to reveal a floor safe just as the letter had described. The combination, her birthday, opened it with a satisfying click. Inside lay several items, legal documents including the cabin's deed in her name, a thick envelope of cash, and a small leather-bound journal. But most intriguing was another key, similar to the one her mother had given her. Elijah removed everything, spreading the items on the coffee table. The journal appeared to be a codebook of sorts, filled with names, dates, and locations written in a shorthand she couldn't immediately decipher. The deed was indeed in her name, transferred 5 years earlier, suggesting this contingency had been planned for some time. She was examining the second key when a sound outside made her freeze. The crunch of tires on gravel, a car engine, not a motorcycle. Heart racing, Elijah quickly returned everything to the safe except the cash and the key, which she pocketed. She replaced the rug, then moved to the window, careful to stay out of sight as she peered outside. A black SUV with government plates had pulled into the clearing. 2 men in suits emerged, surveying the cabin and the surrounding area with professional scrutiny. Not the same agents from the bar raid, but clearly cut from the same cloth. Elijah retreated from the window, mind racing. How had they found this place? Had Raven been followed? Had someone at the club talked? The cabin had 2 doors, the front entrance and a rear door off the kitchen. There was no time to run. They'd see her if she tried to reach her car. Instead, she moved quickly to the kitchen, slipping her father's jacket off and hiding it under the sink cabinet. Whatever these men wanted, connecting her to Wraith wouldn't help. A firm knock sounded at the front door. "Ms. Thorne, federal agents, we'd like to speak with you." Elijah took a deep breath, composing her features into what she hoped was a convincing mask of confusion and concern. She opened the door to find the 2 men standing on the porch, badges already extended. "Agents Wilson and Hayden, Department of Justice," the older one said. "May we come in?" "Department of Justice?" Elijah repeated. "I already spoke with FBI agents at the bar. What's this about?" "Just a follow-up," Agent Wilson said smoothly. "We have a few additional questions regarding Silas Thorne." She hesitated just long enough to appear reluctant, then stepped aside to let them enter. "I don't know what else I can tell you. I'd never met him before tonight." The agents moved into the living room, taking in the space with careful eyes. Hayden walked directly to the wall of photographs, studying them with particular interest. "Interesting collection for someone who never met her father," he observed. "I just arrived," Elijah said. "I haven't had time to look around." Wilson gestured to the couch. "Please, sit. This won't take long." Elijah complied, watching as Hayden continued his subtle inspection of the cabin while Wilson took a seat opposite her. "Ms. Thorne, are you aware of your father's activities over the past 17 years?" Wilson asked. "As I told the FBI, my father left when I was 8. Tonight was the first time I've seen him since." "Yet you tracked him to the Iron Wolves clubhouse," Wilson noted. "How did you manage that?" "My mother left me a photograph before she died. It had the club's insignia. It wasn't difficult to find them online." Wilson nodded thoughtfully. "And she never mentioned your father during her illness?" "Only at the very end," Elijah said, allowing some genuine emotion to color her voice. "The medications made her confused. She thought he was still around sometimes." "I'm sorry for your loss," Wilson said, his tone practiced. "Cancer, correct?" "Yes." "Providence Cancer Center, specifically," he added. "Treated by Dr. Eleanor Vega. Experimental immunotherapy protocol." The specificity sent a chill through Elijah. These weren't random follow-up questions. "You seem to know a lot about my mother's treatment," she said cautiously. We make it our business to be thorough, Wilson replied, just as we know about your recent financial difficulties, medical debt, the sale of your mother's house, your resignation from Portland State to care for her. Is that relevant to my father's arrest? Perhaps, Wilson said. Or perhaps it explains why a young woman with no criminal record suddenly shows up at an outlaw motorcycle club with a gun. Before Elijah could respond, Hayden called from the kitchen. Sir, you might want to see this. Wilson excused himself and joined his partner. Elijah strained to hear their hushed conversation, but caught only fragments. Same model, and check the serial. When they returned, Wilson's demeanor had hardened. Ms. Thorne, are you aware that it's a federal offense to withhold information in an ongoing investigation? I'm not withholding anything, she replied, fighting to keep her voice steady. Then perhaps you can explain the gun we found under the kitchen sink, alongside a leather jacket bearing patches associated with the Iron Wolves MC. Alicia's mind raced. The gun was my mother's, legal, registered to her. I brought it for protection when I confronted the club. The jacket was given to me by my father just before you arrested him. And you hid these items because? Because two strange men showed up at a remote cabin where I'm alone, she countered. Wouldn't you be cautious? Wilson and Hayden exchanged glances. We'll need to take the weapon, Wilson said, for verification purposes. Fine, Elijah agreed, knowing she had little choice. Is there anything else? Just one thing, Wilson said. Do you know what your father did before he disappeared? He was a mechanic, Elijah answered, reciting the story her mother had always told. He worked at a garage. Wilson smiled thinly. Is that what your mother told you? Yes? Ms. Thorne, your father was never a mechanic. Silas Thorne doesn't exist in any employment records prior to 2006, 2 years after he left you and your mother. Alicia frowned. That's impossible. I have his birth certificate, school records. Fabrications, Wilson said flatly. Very good ones, but false nonetheless. I don't understand. No, I don't suppose you do, Wilson agreed, which leaves us with two possibilities. Either you're remarkably uninformed about your own father's identity, or you're being deliberately deceptive. I'm telling you everything I know, Elijah insisted, genuine confusion mixing with growing alarm. Wilson studied her for a long moment, then nodded to Hayden, who retrieved the gun and jacket from the kitchen. We'll be in touch, Ms. Thorne. In the meantime, I suggest you consider carefully what's more important. Loyalty to a father who abandoned you, or cooperation with the authorities, who might be able to help you understand why. They left as precisely as they had arrived, the SUV's tires crunching on gravel as they departed down the drive. Elijah watched from the window until they disappeared among the trees, then collapsed onto the couch, mind reeling from the implications of their visit. Silas Thorne didn't exist before 2006. If that was true, who had her mother married? Who was the man in federal custody? And most disturbing of all, who had been watching and photographing her all these years? She returned to the safe, retrieving the journal and documents she'd hidden. If answers existed, they would be here, in her father's own hand. Hours passed as Elijah pored over the journal, struggling to make sense of its cryptic entries. The codebook, if that's what it was, employed abbreviations and references she couldn't decipher without context. Dates and locations appeared frequently, along with initials that might represent people or operations. One entry caught her attention, dated 2 weeks before her father's disappearance. L+E compromised. Extraction imminent. Protocol 7 in effect. L+E, Lorelei and Elijah. They had been compromised. Whatever that meant, it had precipitated her father's departure. Another entry, 6 months later. Surveillance confirms L+E secure. Cover holding. Annual payment established through K-channel. The pattern continued year after year. Brief updates on her and her mother's status, confirmations of financial transfers, and occasional references to hostile elements and containment protocols. It read like a field officer's log, not a father's journal. The burner phone rang, startling her from her investigation. Raven's number flashed on the screen. They're releasing some of the club now, Raven said without greeting when Elysia answered. Knox and Wraith are still in custody. We're gathering at the secondary location. The Department of Justice sent agents here, Elysia told her. They knew about my mother, her treatment, everything. They took my gun and my father's jacket. A pause. DOJ, not FBI? Yes, they said my father's identity was fabricated, that Silas Thorne didn't exist before 2006. Stay where you are, Raven instructed, her voice tense. Don't use your car, don't use your phone, don't trust anyone who comes to the cabin except me or Cypher. What's happening? Elijah demanded. I don't know yet, Raven admitted. But if DOJ is involved separately from the FBI, this goes deeper than we thought. We need to... The connection cut abruptly. Elijah tried calling back, but the phone went straight to voicemail. She tossed it aside in frustration, returning to the document spread before her. The deed to the cabin was straightforward enough, transferred to her name 5 years earlier through a series of shell companies that obscured its previous ownership. The cash, nearly $50,000, was bundled in neat stacks of used bills, emergency money for a crisis her father had apparently anticipated. But it was another document, hidden within the deeds folder, that finally offered concrete information. A single sheet of paper bearing a Department of Defense letterhead, heavily redacted but with one crucial section intact. Operative, redacted. Codename, Wraith status, deep cover, special assignment. Handler, redacted. Mission, Operation Ironclad. Duration, indefinite. Her father wasn't just a biker. He wasn't even just a criminal. He was military or intelligence. Someone operating so deeply undercover that he'd created an entire false identity, Silas Thorne, and maintained it for years. The implications were staggering. If he'd been on assignment, then his departure hadn't been abandonment at all. It had been duty, sacrifice. And if that was true, what did it mean for her mother's illness and death? For the hostile elements mentioned in the journal? For the agents who seemed far too interested in Elijah herself? The sound of an approaching vehicle drew her attention once more. Not the government SUV returning, but the distinctive rumble of a motorcycle. Elijah moved cautiously to the window. Dusk had fallen during her research, casting the clearing in deep shadows broken only by the bike's single headlight. The rider cut the engine and dismounted. Even in the dimness, she recognized Cypher's lean form as he approached the cabin, moving with urgency. Elijah opened the door before he could knock. Raven was just cut off mid-call, she said without preamble. What's happening? Cypher brushed past her into the cabin, his normally composed demeanor visibly shaken. We don't have much time, he said, scanning the room quickly. The club's been compromised. Raven was picked up 20 minutes ago by the same agents who visited you. How do you know that? Because I was supposed to be with her, he explained, moving to the windows to check outside. I was running surveillance from a distance, saw the whole thing. Why would they arrest her now? She was free this morning. Because this was never about the club, Cypher said, turning to face her. The raid, the arrests, all of it. It was theater. The real target was your father. And now, potentially, you. Elijah's mind raced. Because of what he knows? Because of what you both might know, Cypher corrected. Have you found the safe? She nodded, gesturing to the documents spread across the table. Cypher examined them quickly, focusing on the DOD letter. This explains a lot, he muttered. Knox suspected something like this, but Wraith never confirmed. Did you find a key? Yes, Elijah said, retrieving it from her pocket. Similar to the one my mother gave me. Cypher compared the two keys, then nodded. Safety deposit box keys, but not commercial ones. Military grade, secure storage facilities. Together, they'll open something important enough that multiple government agencies are scrambling to contain it. What could be so important? Evidence, Cypher suggested. Something your father collected during his undercover work. Something incriminating enough to be worth killing for. The implication hit Elijah like a physical blow. You think my mother was murdered? The cancer was real. I watched her waste away for months. Cancer was real, Cypher agreed grimly. But was it natural? Experimental protocols, unusual progression, specific doctors? Have you considered the possibility it was induced? The room seemed to tilt around her. That's insane. Is it? Cypher challenged. Your father infiltrated something big enough to warrant a deep cover military operation. He collected evidence, split the keys between himself and your mother as insurance. When they realized he had this evidence, they couldn't find him, so they found her instead. But why wait until now? She died a month ago. Because they needed both keys, Cypher explained. They expected to find your mother's key when she died. When they didn't, They started watching you, waiting for you to lead them to your father, which is exactly what happened. Elijah sank into a chair, the weight of these revelations threatening to crush her. So, what do we do now? Cypher moved to the kitchen, checking the cabinets until he found what he was looking for, a first aid kit. From it, he removed a small black device the size of a thumb drive. This is a secure communications module, he explained. Military grade, like everything else your father touched. It will allow us to contact him directly. He's in federal custody, Elijah pointed out. Cypher smiled thinly. Is he? Or is that what they want us to think? Before he could elaborate, headlights swept across the windows. Multiple vehicles approaching fast, no attempt at stealth. Too late, Cypher muttered, pocketing the device. They've found us. Elijah grabbed the journal and the DOD letter, stuffing them into her pockets. Is there a way out? Cypher moved to a bookshelf, pulling a specific volume that triggered a mechanism. The entire shelf swung outward, revealing a narrow passage. Your father planned for everything, he said, ushering her toward the hidden door. This leads to a tunnel that comes out half a mile away. There's a vehicle staged there. What about you? I'll delay them, Cypher said, closing the shelf behind her. Find Knox. He'll be at the rendezvous point by now. Where's that? Iron Church, Cypher replied cryptically. The beginning of all this. The shelf sealed with a soft click, plunging Elijah into darkness, broken only by emergency lighting along the tunnel floor. Behind her, she heard the cabin door burst open, voices shouting commands, Cypher's calm responses. Then, a single gunshot. Elijah froze, heart pounding, listening for any indication of what had happened. More voices, urgent and angry, the sound of the cabin being searched systematically. She couldn't go back. Whatever had happened to Cypher, returning would only ensure her own capture. With no choice but to press forward, she followed the tunnel's gentle descent into the earth, each step carrying her deeper into the mystery her father had constructed around their lives. The tunnel extended for what felt like miles, though Alicia knew it couldn't be more than the half-mile Cypher had mentioned. It ended at a metal door with a keypad. She hesitated, realizing she hadn't asked for the code. On instinct, she tried her birthday. The light remained red. She tried her mother's birthday. Still nothing. Finally, she entered the date her father had left, the day their family had been shattered. The light turned green, the door unlocked with a hydraulic hiss. Beyond lay a small underground garage containing a single vehicle, a black dual-sport motorcycle, rugged enough for off-road travel, but inconspicuous on highways. On its seat was a helmet, a prepaid phone, and a sealed envelope. Elijah opened it with trembling hands, recognizing her father's handwriting once more. If you're reading this, everything has gone wrong. The keys must be united. Find me at the beginning. Trust only those who wear the wolf. She pocketed the note, donned the helmet, and started the bike. As the garage door opened automatically, revealing a dirt trail leading through dense forest, Elijah made her decision. She would find the Iron Church. She would locate Knox, and she would discover exactly what kind of man her father really was, hero or villain, protector or betrayer. The one certainty in the chaos her life had become was that nothing was as it seemed, not her father's identity, not her mother's death, and perhaps most disturbing of all, not Alicia's own place in whatever deadly game was unfolding around her. As she accelerated into the darkness, one thought crystallized in her mind. The truth was, waiting at the beginning, where iron met faith and wolves guarded ancient secrets. Have you ever discovered that something you believed your whole life was built on hidden truths? Share your story of unexpected revelations in the comments below, and subscribe to find out what secrets await Elijah at the mysterious Iron Church. The Iron Church wasn't a church at all. As dawn broke over the mountains east of Portland, Elijah crested a ridge on the motorcycle and saw it for the first time. An abandoned steel mill nestled in a remote valley, its towering furnace still standing like a cathedral spire against the lightening sky. Nature had begun reclaiming the industrial complex, vines climbing the rusted structures, trees pushing through cracked concrete. She'd ridden through the night, following directions from the prepaid phone's GPS, taking back roads and forest trails to avoid detection. Exhaustion pulled at her, but adrenaline kept her alert as she navigated the final descent toward the complex. Iron Church. the beginning of all this, Cypher had said. What had started here? What connection did this decrepit industrial relic have to her father, to the Iron Wolves, to the military operation that had somehow engulfed her entire life? As she approached, Elysia noticed subtle signs that the abandonment was partly illusion. Security cameras disguised as bird nests, a section of fence that appeared dilapidated but showed signs of recent repair, tire tracks in the mud leading to what had once been a loading dock. She parked the motorcycle behind a collapsed outbuilding and removed her helmet, listening. The morning was quiet except for birdsong and the occasional metallic groan of the old structures shifting in the warming air. No voices, no engines. If Knox was here, he was keeping a low profile. Elysia checked the prepaid phone. No service, which seemed unlikely to be coincidental. She was on her own. She approached the main structure cautiously, staying close to the walls, moving from shadow to shadow. The entrance, a massive sliding door that had once admitted rail cars, stood partially open, just enough for a person to slip through. Inside, daylight filtered through holes in the roof, casting dusty beams across the cavernous space. Massive furnaces stood silent, their rust-eaten mouths gaping. Catwalks crisscrossed overhead, leading to control rooms and observation platforms. The air smelled of damp metal and decades-old coal dust. "You made it," the voice echoed slightly in the vast space. Elysia spun toward it, heart racing. Knox emerged from behind one of the smaller furnaces, looking haggard but uninjured. He wore civilian clothes rather than his club cut, and he moved with the careful gait of a man expecting trouble. "How did you get out?" Elysia asked, maintaining her distance. "They never intended to keep me," Knox answered. "Just needed to separate us, create confusion. By the time I realized it was a setup, Wraith was gone." "Gone? Where? Escaped? Or taken somewhere else?" "Neither," Knox said grimly. "Your father was never arrested. The man they led away in handcuffs was Agent Morgan, DEA, wearing a hood. The real target was you." The revelation hit Elysia like a physical blow. "I don't understand." "Your father and I built this place," Knox said, gesturing to the mill around them. "Not the steel part. What's underneath? This was our first safe house, established 23 years ago when Operation Ironclad began." He moved toward a control room set into the wall. Elysia followed warily, hand slipping into her pocket, where she'd stashed a wrench from the motorcycle's toolkit. A poor weapon, but better than nothing. "You're wondering if you can trust me," Knox observed without looking back. "Good. Your father would approve. Trust has to be earned, especially in our world." The control room was surprisingly intact, its banks of analog switches and dials preserved beneath layers of dust. Knox moved to a specific panel and entered a code on a numeric keypad that seemed anachronistic among the older technology. A hydraulic hum vibrated through the floor. One section of wall slid aside, revealing a modern elevator. "After you," Knox said. Elysia hesitated. "How do I know this isn't another trap?" "You don't," Knox admitted. "But consider this. If I wanted to harm you, why bring you to our most secure facility? Why not just have the feds grab you at the cabin?" Logic suggested he was right, but instinct kept her cautious. "You betrayed my father at the bar." "I did what was necessary to maintain our cover," Knox countered. "Your father understood. It was a contingency we'd planned for." "And Cypher? Was his death planned for too?" Pain flashed across Knox's weathered face. "Cypher knew the risks. We all do. His sacrifice bought you time to get here, and it won't be wasted." He gestured again to the elevator. "Your father is waiting." Those 4 words decided her. Elysia stepped into the elevator, Knox following. The doors closed silently, and they began to descend. "The Iron Wolves were never just a motorcycle club," Knox explained as they dropped deeper beneath the earth. "That was our cover. In reality, we're a black ops unit formed under Operation Ironclad, a joint task force created to infiltrate domestic terror cells, drug cartels, and militia groups from the inside." "My father was military," Elysia said, fitting pieces together. "Not a biker?" "He was both," Knox corrected. "Special forces originally, recruited for his undercover skills. The rest of us came from various branches, military intelligence, DEA, even FBI. We built identities as outlaw bikers, established the Iron Wolves as a club, with chapters strategically placed near high-value targets. And it worked. For 15 years, we disrupted more operations than I can count, seized billions in illegal drugs and weapons, prevented at least 3 domestic terror attacks, all while maintaining our cover as just another MC running the usual rackets. Until something went wrong, Elijah guessed. Knox nodded grimly. About 17 years ago, we uncovered something bigger than cartels or terrorists, corruption within our own command structure. Officials using Ironclad as cover for their personal operations, weapons sales, drug distribution, even human trafficking. Your father gathered evidence, documented everything. And they found out. They did. Threatened you and your mother, forced your father to go deeper underground, separate himself completely from his family to protect you. He split the evidence between 2 secure locations, each requiring a different key. The elevator slowed to a stop. The doors opened to reveal a facility that looked nothing like the decrepit mill above. A modern command center with computer workstations, communications equipment, and wall monitors displaying security feeds from various locations, including the cabin Elijah had fled. Standing at a central console, reviewing data on a screen, was her father. Silas Thorne, or whoever he truly was, looked up as they entered. His expression remained controlled, but his eyes revealed a storm of emotion as they met Elysia's. "You made it," he said simply. "No thanks to your cryptic instructions," she replied, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You always were quick to figure things out, even as a child." "Not quick enough, apparently," Elijah countered, "since I spent 17 years believing you abandoned us." The smile vanished. "I deserve that, and worse." "Wraith," Knox interrupted. "We don't have much time. They'll have processed the cabin footage by now. They know she escaped." Silas nodded, all business again. "Did you bring the keys?" Elijah withdrew both keys from her pocket but didn't hand them over. "First, I want the truth, all of it. Who are you really? What happened to my mother? And why did you let me believe you were gone forever?" Her father exchanged glances with Knox, who nodded and moved to a workstation, giving them some privacy. "My real name is Commander Gabriel Thorne, Naval Intelligence," he began. "Silas was a cover identity created for Operation Ironclad. I met your mother before the operation began, married her as Gabriel. When I was recruited for Ironclad, I was supposed to cut all personal ties, but I couldn't leave Lorelei." "So you created a dual life," Elijah surmised. "Gabriel Thorne officially died in a training accident. Silas Thorne, distant cousin, mechanic, stepped in to help the grieving widow. Eventually married her. It wasn't by the book, but my handlers allowed it since it created a deeper cover." "And when you left us?" Pain creased his features. "We uncovered evidence that senior officials within the DOJ, including the deputy director, were using Ironclad resources to run their own operations. Your mother and I were placed under surveillance. They threatened to eliminate both of you if I didn't turn over the evidence I'd collected. So you ran. I negotiated," Gabriel corrected. "Faked a surrender, made them believe I destroyed the evidence. In exchange, they agreed to leave you and your mother alone. But I knew they'd never honor that agreement long term. I needed to disappear completely, make them believe I was no longer a threat while I built a case that could withstand their influence." "For 17 years?" Elijah challenged, anger rising despite her efforts to remain detached. "You couldn't find a way to let us know you were alive? That you hadn't just walked out on us?" "Every contact was a risk," Gabriel said quietly. "I watched over you from a distance, provided financial support through channels they couldn't trace, protected you in ways you never knew about." "You weren't there when she got sick," Elijah said, voice breaking, "when she needed you most." "I didn't know," Gabriel admitted, genuine anguish in his expression. "By the time I found out, the cancer was already advanced, and it wasn't natural." Cypher suggested that too. He said it was induced. Gabriel's jaw tightened. "Dr. Vega works for them. The experimental treatment your mother received was designed to appear therapeutic while actually accelerating the disease. They were looking for the key, Elijah. They knew she had it. They thought she'd give it to them to save herself. But she gave it to me instead," Elijah realized, "and told me to find you. She was stronger than any of us," Gabriel said softly. Even at the end, Knox rejoined them, his expression urgent. Satellite shows vehicles approaching from the North Access Road. We're out of time. Gabriel turned to Alicia. I know I've given you every reason to doubt me, to hate me, but right now, I need you to trust me one more time. Those keys open a secure server containing all the evidence we've gathered: names, dates, operations, financial transactions, everything needed to bring down the entire corrupt network. Why not just access it yourself? Why wait for me? Because I encrypted it to require both keys, simultaneously inserted from different access points, Gabriel explained. Your mother held one key, I held the other. If anything happened to either of us, the other would need help to access the server. And now they're coming to stop us, Alicia concluded. Gabriel nodded grimly. Once we activate the server, it will automatically upload the evidence to multiple secure locations: federal judges, international watchdog organizations, select media outlets. The encryption delay gives us 12 minutes to evacuate before the upload completes. And then what? And then we finally have a chance at a life without running, Gabriel said, a vulnerability in his voice she hadn't heard before. If you want that. Before Alicia could respond, an alarm sounded throughout the facility. Knox moved to a security monitor. Perimeter breach, multiple vehicles, they're moving faster than expected. Federal agents? Alicia asked. Some, Knox confirmed, but not all. These aren't official vehicles. Contractors, cleaners. Gabriel's expression hardened. They're not here to arrest anyone. They're here to eliminate the threat and recover the keys. He turned to Alicia. We need to move now. She handed over her mother's key. What do we do? Gabriel led them deeper into the facility, through a series of secure doors that required biometric authentication. The server is in the central vault. I'll take the north access point. Knox will escort you to the south point. We'll insert the keys simultaneously. They reached a final door, heavy steel with redundant security measures. Beyond lay a circular room dominated by a central column of servers, glowing with status lights. 2 access terminals stood at opposite sides of the room. Knox, Gabriel said, handing the older man a key card. Get her to the south terminal. Wait for my signal. Knox nodded, accepting the card and Alicia's key. Gabriel turned to his daughter. Alicia, Save it, she interrupted. Let's finish this first. He nodded once, accepting her terms, and moved toward the north terminal, while Knox led Alicia to the south side of the room. Through the facility's speakers, they could hear the progress of the intruders, breach alerts from successive security doors, gunfire, shouted commands. The enemy was moving with professional efficiency, neutralizing defenses as they approached. 12 minutes once we activate, Knox reminded her, positioning her at the terminal. Then 5 minutes to reach the emergency exit tunnel. Any longer, and we'll be caught in the facility lockdown. What about the others? The rest of the club? Most were never here, Knox explained. Only the inner circle knew the truth about Ironclad. The rest believed the cover story. They were just bikers who followed our lead. And Raven, Cypher? Raven's been arrested, but she'll be protected once the evidence goes public. Cypher? Knox's voice faltered. We don't know yet, but he understood the mission, the risks. From across the room, Gabriel called out. They've breached sublevel 2. We're out of time. On my mark. 3, 2, 1, now. Knox and Alicia inserted their keys simultaneously. The terminals hummed to life, screens displaying a progress bar and a countdown. 12, 11:59, 11:58. Upload initiated, Gabriel confirmed, already moving toward them. Let's go. A new alarm sounded, different from the breach alerts, more urgent. Gabriel's expression changed. They've deployed gas in the upper levels, standard protocol to neutralize all personnel. The escape tunnel? Alicia asked. Still viable, but we need breathing apparatus, Knox said, moving to a storage locker and retrieving 3 masks. He distributed them quickly, helping Alicia adjust hers. This way, Gabriel directed, leading them through a side door into a maintenance corridor. The sounds of the E-Week intruders grew louder. Boots on metal stairs, tactical communication, the distinctive sound of doors being breached. The corridor ended at a service elevator, smaller than the main one, designed for emergency evacuation. Gabriel punched in a code, and the doors slid open. This leads directly to the surface, half a mile from the main facility, he explained as they entered. Vehicle is staged at the exit point. The elevator began its ascent, the digital display tracking their progress through the sublevels. Between the third and second levels, it lurched to a stop. "They've overridden the controls," Knox said, already prying at the access panel. "Emergency protocol." Gabriel joined him, working quickly to bypass the security lockout. "We don't have time for this. The upload is at 7 minutes. If we're not clear of the blast radius by then—" "Blast radius?" Elijah interrupted. "You didn't mention any explosion." Gabriel didn't look up from his work. "Final failsafe. If they breach the server room before the upload completes, the entire facility is rigged to self-destruct. Ensures no one can stop the process once it's begun." "And you didn't think this was worth mentioning earlier?" "Would it have changed your decision?" he asked, finally meeting her eyes. Before she could answer, the elevator jerked into motion again, resuming its climb. "Got it," Knox announced. "But they'll know where we're headed now." The digital display counted upward. SL2, SL1, G. The doors opened onto what appeared to be an abandoned storage shed disguised among trees. Through its open door, Elijah could see daylight and forest beyond. Knox moved first, scanning the area before signaling them forward. "Clear for now. Vehicle is behind the shed." They emerged into morning sunlight, the air crisp and clean after the recycled atmosphere of the underground facility. The vehicle was actually 3 dirt bikes, partially concealed beneath camouflage netting. "Split up," Gabriel instructed. 3 targets are harder to track than 1. "Knox, you take the south route. Elijah, you're with me." Knox nodded, already moving toward one of the bikes. He paused beside Elijah, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Your mother would be proud," he said simply, then continued to his vehicle. Gabriel uncovered the remaining bikes, performing a quick inspection of each. "Ever ridden before?" he asked Elysia. "I managed to get here, didn't I?" she replied, mounting the nearest bike. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Your mother's daughter through and through." The sound of vehicles approaching, heavy engines, multiple directions, cut their conversation short. Gabriel swung onto his bike and kicked it to life. "Stay close. Follow my lead. If we get separated, head for the coordinates in your phone. Rendezvous point Charlie." Elysia nodded, starting her own engine. Knox had already disappeared into the trees, taking a trail that led south. Gabriel pointed his bike east toward rougher terrain and accelerated. Elysia followed, adrenaline surging as they plunged into the forest. They rode hard through dense undergrowth, Gabriel navigating from memory, selecting paths that would be difficult for larger vehicles to follow. Behind them, Elysia could hear engines and shouted commands as their pursuers mobilized. A steep ravine appeared ahead. Gabriel gunned his engine, launching his bike over the gap. Elysia followed without hesitation, feeling the momentary weightlessness of flight before her wheels connected with the opposite bank. Gabriel flashed her an approving glance, then focused forward again, leading them deeper into the wilderness. The sounds of pursuit gradually faded, suggesting they'd successfully broken contact, at least temporarily. After nearly 30 minutes of hard riding, they reached a small clearing beside a stream. Gabriel cut his engine and dismounted, signaling Elysia to do the same. "We wait here," he said, checking his watch. "The upload should be complete by now. If it worked, we'll start seeing the effects within hours." "And if it didn't work?" Elysia asked. "Then we keep running," he answered honestly. "Same as I've been doing for 17 years. They secured the bikes out of sight and moved to a vantage point, where they could watch for approach from all directions. Gabriel produced a satellite phone from his pack and attempted to establish contact. "Knox, status check," he said when the connection was made. There was a pause as he listened. "Understood. We're at position Echo. We'll proceed to Charlie at nightfall." He ended the call, turning to Elysia. He made it out. No sign of pursuit on his end. "What about the others? Raven? The rest of the club?" "Knox is working on that. Once the evidence goes public, legitimate federal agents will move to secure witnesses and separate them from the corrupt elements. It's going to be chaotic for a while." Elysia sat on a fallen log, suddenly exhausted as the adrenaline began to fade. "So, we just wait?" Gabriel nodded, taking a position nearby, close enough to talk, but respecting her space. "For now, I know you have questions. This might be a good time to ask them. Where to begin? 17 years of absence. A lifetime of lies. A mother lost too soon." Elysia struggled to organize her thoughts. "Who were you?" she finally asked. Before all this, before Ironclad, before Silas Thorne, Gabriel considered the question. I was a naval intelligence officer. Before that, SEAL Team 6. Before that, a kid from Montana who enlisted to see the world and serve his country. He paused. But if you're asking who I was to your mother, I was the man who loved her more than life itself. That part was never a lie. She never knew the truth. She knew parts of it, that I worked undercover, that it was dangerous, but the full extent, no, I kept that from her to protect her. And she accepted that? The secrets? The double life? Your mother was the strongest person I've ever known, Gabriel said softly. She understood duty and sacrifice better than most soldiers I served with. She knew I had two names, two lives. She loved both versions of me. Elijah absorbed this, trying to reconcile it with the mother she'd known, a woman who never spoke of her absent husband, who raised a daughter alone without complaint, who fought cancer with quiet dignity until the end. When did you know they'd gotten to her? Elijah asked. That they'd poisoned her. Pain flashed across Gabriel's features. Too late. I had people watching you both, but they were careful. Dr. Vega was one of theirs. The experimental treatment was designed to mimic aggressive cancer while actually causing it. By the time my people identified the pattern and alerted me, she was already in hospice care. You could have come then, Elijah said, unable to keep the accusation from her voice. At the end, you could have said goodbye. I tried, Gabriel admitted. I was outside the hospital the night she died, but they were watching too. 3 vehicles with DOJ contractors. If I'd gone inside, they'd have followed, and you would have been caught in the crossfire. The thought of him so close, yet unable to reach them, stirred conflicting emotions in Elysia's heart. Anger at the years of absence warred with understanding of the impossible choice he'd faced. She knew you were trying, Elijah said after a long moment. At the end, when the pain medication made her confused, she kept saying she could feel you nearby. I thought it was delirium, but she knew. Gabriel turned away, but not before she glimpsed the moisture in his eyes. When he faced her again, his composure had returned, though his voice remained rough. She left you the key, told you to find me. Even at the end, she was fighting. Fighting what exactly? Who are these people? We called them the Cabal, Gabriel explained. A network within the justice system, intelligence community, and military that began using counterterrorism operations as cover for their own enterprises after 9/11. Weapons dealing, drug distribution, human trafficking. They embedded themselves in legitimate operations like Ironclad, siphoning resources and using our infrastructure for their private ventures. And you have proof of all this? Names, dates, bank transfers, video testimony from witnesses. Enough to bring down dozens of senior officials, including the current Deputy Attorney General, 3 federal judges, and the former director of the DEA. If the upload succeeded, that information is now in the hands of every major newspaper, several congressional oversight committees, and Interpol. As if on cue, the satellite phone chimed. Gabriel answered, listening intently before a smile spread across his features. It worked, he confirmed to Elijah as he ended the call. The first arrests are already happening. It's breaking on major news networks. Elijah should have felt relief, vindication, even triumph. Instead, a profound weariness settled over her. What happens now? To us? Gabriel's expression softened. That depends on you. The evidence includes full documentation of Ironclad, my role in it, and the threat against you and your mother. My legal team is already moving to secure immunity deals and restore my identity. In time, I could be Gabriel Thorne again. Officially. And unofficially, are you Gabriel or Silas? He considered this. I've been Silas longer than I was ever Gabriel, but the truth is, I'm the man who raised you for 8 years, the man who loved your mother until her last breath, even from a distance, the man who would do anything to protect you, including staying away when that was the only way to keep you safe. He paused. Whoever that man is, he's your father, if you'll have him. Before Elijah could respond, distant engine sounds reached them, approaching vehicles, but not the tactical units that had pursued them earlier. Gabriel tensed, reaching for a weapon, but the satellite phone chimed again. He answered, listened briefly, then relaxed. It's Knox, he explained. With reinforcements, legitimate federal agents this time. The Cabal leadership is being rounded up, and protective details are being assigned to key witnesses, including us. Within minutes, a convoy of unmarked SUVs arrived at the clearing. Knox emerged from the lead vehicle, accompanied by a woman in a crisp suit who introduced herself as Special Agent Diaz, FBI. "Commander Thorne," she greeted Gabriel formally. "The Bureau extends its gratitude for your service and sacrifice. We've secured the area and are prepared to escort you and your daughter to a safe location." "The Iron Wolves?" Gabriel asked. "Those aware of Ironclad have been debriefed and secured," Diaz confirmed. "The rest are being monitored but left in place for now. We need to maintain appearances until all Cabal elements are identified and neutralized." Knox approached Elijah while Gabriel continued his discussion with Diaz. "You did good, kid," he said quietly. "Your old man's been planning this day for a long time, but he couldn't have pulled it off without you." "And Cypher, any word?" Knox's expression tightened. "He didn't make it. Took his own life rather than risk interrogation when they breached the cabin. Old school to the end." Elijah absorbed this news with a fresh wave of grief, another casualty in a war she'd only just discovered she was part of. "Raven's safe," Knox continued, offering what comfort he could. "Already giving her statement to the FBI task force. She said to tell you the jacket's waiting when you're ready for it." "The jacket?" "Your father's original cut, the one they took from the cabin. In our world, that's not just leather and patches. It's legacy, history, identity." Knox studied her thoughtfully. Wraith earned his cut over decades of service. But legacies get passed down. That's how it works in families, and in clubs. Gabriel rejoined them, having concluded his conversation with Diaz. "They've arranged secure transportation. Will be debriefed in Seattle, then relocated temporarily while the investigation proceeds." "How long will that take?" Elijah asked. "Months, most likely. The Cabal's roots run deep. Identifying and removing every corrupt element will take time." He hesitated. "I know this isn't the homecoming either of us imagined. You have every right to walk away, establish your own life separate from all this." Elijah considered his words, feeling the weight of choice after days of simply reacting to events beyond her control. "Mom's medical bills," she said finally. "They were part of this too, weren't they? Designed to pressure me financially after she was gone?" Gabriel nodded grimly. "They expected you to be desperate, vulnerable, easy to manipulate or threaten." "Well, they were wrong about that," Knox interjected with a hint of pride. "Girl walks into a biker bar with a gun, demands answers, stands her ground even when surrounded. Lorelei raised her right." "She did," Gabriel agreed softly, eyes on his daughter. Elijah met his gaze, seeing in it all the years of separation, the weight of choices made and paths not taken. "I still have questions," she said. "A lot of them. And I'm still angry about the time we lost." "I understand," he replied, resignation in his tone. "But," Alicia continued, "Mom believed in you until the end. She used her last strength to help you finish this. I think I owe it to her to at least hear your side of the story. The whole story, not just pieces." Hope flickered in Gabriel's eyes. "Whatever you want to know, I'll tell you. No more secrets." "Then I guess I'm coming with you to Seattle," Elijah decided. "After that, we'll see." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a beginning. A chance to rebuild what had been lost, to understand the man behind the myth of Wraith, to connect with the father she'd thought abandoned her, but had been fighting for her all along. As they prepared to depart, Elijah found herself thinking of her mother. Lorelei had known the truth, or enough of it, and had kept faith despite the cost. She'd recognized that love sometimes meant separation when the alternative was destruction. And in her final act, she'd brought father and daughter back together, ensuring that the truth would finally emerge. 3 days later, Elijah stood at her mother's grave for the first time since the funeral. Gabriel stood beside her, weathered hands clasping a bouquet of wildflowers, Lorelei's favorite. The morning was clear, the cemetery quiet except for birdsong and the distant sounds of the city below. "She would have been proud of you," Gabriel said softly, placing the flowers at the base of the headstone. "She always was." "I think she'd be proud of both of us," Elijah replied. "We finished what she started." The news had broken internationally, a corruption scandal reaching the highest levels of government, decades in the making, exposed by evidence so comprehensive that denials were futile. Names Elijah had never heard before were now headline fixtures, their careers and freedom forfeit to justice long delayed. The Iron Wolves continued under Knox's leadership, their cover intact, but their mission evolving. No longer needed as an undercover operation, they would transition gradually to a legitimate organization focused on veteran support and rehabilitation, warriors finding new purpose in peacetime. As for Gabriel and Elijah, their future remained unwritten. The process of reconnection would take time. Trust, once broken, couldn't be restored in days or weeks. But they had taken the first steps on that journey, each day bringing new understandings, new revelations, new opportunities to bridge the years of separation. Elijah placed her hand atop the headstone, feeling the cool marble beneath her fingers. "Goodbye, Mom," she whispered. "We're going to be okay." As they walked back to the waiting car, Gabriel hesitated. "There's something I've been meaning to give you," he said, reaching into his jacket. He withdrew a small velvet pouch and placed it in her hand. Inside was a silver pendant, a wolf's head with eyes of tiny rubies suspended on a delicate chain. Elijah recognized it immediately from old photographs of her mother. "She wore this every day until I left," Gabriel explained. "It was my first gift to her. The wolf was always my symbol, long before the Iron Wolves. When things went bad, I asked her to hide it away, afraid it would connect her to me if the wrong people saw it." Elijah turned the pendant over. On the back was an inscription: "Two paths, one heart." "Our private motto," Gabriel said. "No matter where duty took me, what identity I assumed, we were always connected, always one." Elijah closed her fingers around the pendant, feeling its weight, not just silver and stone, but history, love, sacrifice. Without speaking, she fastened it around her neck, the wolf resting against her collarbone, as it once had against her mother's. Gabriel watched, emotion plain in his eyes. "It suits you." In that moment, something shifted between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding, recognition. The first thread in a tapestry that might, with time and care, be rewoven into the relationship that had been severed 17 years before. As they drove away from the cemetery, Elijah found herself thinking of the night she'd walked into the Wolf's Head bar, gun in hand, seeking answers about a father she believed had abandoned her. She'd found instead a man who had sacrificed everything to protect her, a conspiracy reaching into the highest levels of power, and a legacy she never knew was hers to claim. The leather jacket, her father's original cut, hung in her closet now, restored to her by Raven after the evidence went public. She hadn't worn it again, not yet. But someday, perhaps, when the wounds of the past had healed enough, she would slip it on and feel its weight on her shoulders, not as a costume, as her first jacket had been, but as a mantle rightfully inherited. Two paths, one heart. Her parents had lived that truth through 17 years of forced separation. Now it fell to Elijah to bridge the divide between past and future, between the life she'd known and the truth she'd discovered. As Portland receded behind them, Elijah touched the wolf pendant at her throat and made a silent promise, to her mother, to her father, and to herself. She would carry forward the strength of both parents, her mother's quiet resilience and her father's fierce protection. And she would forge her own path, knowing now that she had never truly walked alone. Have you ever discovered an unexpected truth that changed your understanding of your entire life? A revelation that transformed strangers into family or enemies into allies? Share your story of life-changing discoveries in the comments below, and subscribe for more tales of hidden truths and the power of legacy.